My wife cheated with her boss, promising retirement money but secretly siphoning off $300, $0 into a secret account. Then I found out she was planning to claim everything in a divorce court, leaving me with nothing. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. Honestly, I never thought my wife would turn out to be such a manipulative, lying bitch. The whole thing started so innocently. At least, that's what I told myself at first. We'd been married for 8 years, and for the most part I thought we had a good, stable life. She was beautiful, ambitious, and seemed genuinely committed. But then little things started to change. Small things at first: missed calls, late nights, unexplained absences. I brushed it off, told myself she was busy with work, that maybe she was stressed or just tired. She always had a way of convincing me she was right, that I was overthinking, that I was paranoid. But I wasn't paranoid. Not anymore. One night I was going through the credit card statements, just trying to get a sense of where our money was going. Nothing unusual, until I saw a strange charge from an account I didn't recognize. A large withdrawal, 50 spent in a single day. That made my stomach drop. I immediately called the bank, and when I did, I learned that it opened a secret account under her maiden name. No joint account, no mention of it. She'd been siphoning off money little by little over the last year, I guess. I felt my blood boil. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face for so long? That wasn't the worst part. I decided to dig deeper. I needed to know what she was hiding. That's when I found out she'd been having an affair with her boss, Mark. It all clicked into place. The late nights, the secret texts, the sudden business trips she'd taken. I found her phone records, and there were dozens of messages, some explicit, some just flirtatious. She promised Mark she'd leave me, that she was planning to divorce me and get everything. Our house, our savings, everything I'd worked for. She'd even promised him she'd retire early and run off with him, leaving me with nothing. I remember feeling numb at first. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't breathe. She'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer. And all the while she was planning her escape, promising me she loved me, but secretly plotting her new life with Mark. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was racing, trying to process how the woman I thought I knew could turn into this manipulative, greedy, cheating bitch. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. That night I stayed up until dawn, reading through everything I could find: emails, bank statements, text logs. I couldn't believe I'd been so stupid, so trusting. She was always bitchy when I questioned her about her late nights, always denying everything, twisting words, calling me paranoid. Now I saw her for what she really was: a liar, a cheat, someone who'd been planning her betrayal for months, maybe years. I knew I had to confront her. I had to get some answers, even if I already knew the truth. I wanted to hear her lie to my face again, to see if she'd keep up the act. I just didn't know how much more I could take. The betrayal wasn't just about the money or the affair. It was about the fact that she'd been so cold, so calculating, and so willing to destroy what we'd built together. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything, trying to find a way out, a way to fix this, or more likely, a way to end it. I thought about the life I'd worked so hard for, the years I'd dedicated to making this marriage work. And I felt this rising rage, because she'd lied, she'd cheated, and she was planning to walk away with everything. I knew then that I couldn't let her get away with it, not without a fight. That's when I started planning my next move. I had to find out exactly how deep her deception went, how much she'd taken, and what her plans were for the future. Because whatever she had in mind, I was going to make sure she paid for it. I wasn't going to let her walk out with my life savings, my house, or my dignity. I was done being the naive husband who trusted her blindly. Now I was ready to fight back, and I had a feeling this was only the beginning. Do you want me to keep going? The next morning I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding, and all I could think about was how blind I'd been. Had always been the bitchy wife, quick to throw tantrums, dismiss my feelings, and act like she was the queen of the world. But I never imagined she'd go this far, siphoning off hundreds of thousands of dollars, cheating on me with her boss, Mark, and lying to my face every step of the way. It was like a bad movie, except this was my life, and it was unraveling in front of me. I knew I couldn't confront her without a plan. I needed evidence. I needed to understand her entire scheme. So I did what anyone in my position would do. I hired a private investigator. I couldn't trust her anymore, not after what I'd found out. I told him to follow her, gather proof of her affair, and to dig into that secret account she'd opened. I didn't want her to suspect I was onto her, so I kept it low-key. I just needed to see what she was really up to. 2 days later, I got the report. She'd been meeting Mark at some fancy hotels, staying out late and spending money like it was water. The investigator also found evidence that she transferred more than $300, $0 into that secret account, money she'd kept hidden from me, her supposed partner in life. I couldn't believe it. That much cash gone without a trace. And all the while she was pretending everything was fine, acting like she loved me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. Now I had concrete proof. I sat in my living room staring at the documents, trying to process what I'd uncovered. The betrayal stung worse than I thought possible. I'd always been the kind of guy who believed in honesty, loyalty, and working through problems. But she'd been lying to my face for months. She promised me retirement, promised me she loved me, all while planning her exit strategy with Mark. It was so cold, so calculated. I felt the rage building inside me. How could she do this? How could she be so selfish? I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I couldn't do it without preparing myself. I started gathering everything I'd found, screenshots of texts, bank statements, the investigator's report, and I kept it all in a folder. I wanted to be ready for whatever she threw at me. I also started reaching out to a lawyer just to understand what my options were. I wasn't about to let her walk away with my money or my house without a fight. That night I waited until she came home. I was calm, too calm maybe, but I knew I had to keep my composure. When she walked through the door, I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "We need to talk." Her face instantly twisted into that familiar bitchy sneer, like she thought she could manipulate her way out of this, but I wasn't going to let her. I laid everything out, her secret account, the affair, the money she'd stolen. Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she'd deny it all, but then she started to spin her usual lies. "Oh, come on, Jason," she said, crossing her arms. "You're overreacting. You don't have any proof. You're just jealous because I've been working late. Mark and I are just friends, and that account, it's nothing. You're crazy." I shook my head. "Don't lie to me anymore. I have the reports, the texts, everything. I know what you've been doing. You've been cheating, stealing, planning to leave me with nothing. How could you?" My voice was tight, my fists clenched. I saw her try to deny it, to gaslight me, but I wasn't falling for it. I was done being the naive guy who trusted her blindly. She started crying, fake tears, the kind she always used when she wanted to manipulate me. But I wasn't buying it. I told her I was done, that I was going to see a lawyer, and that I'd be taking everything she tried to claim in the divorce. Her face twisted into a sneer again, and she spat. "You're just jealous because I'm leaving. You'll never find someone like me again, Jason." That's when I realized she was already planning her escape, already trying to make me the villain. That night was a mess. She yelled, called me paranoid, said I was ruining her life. But I knew the truth now, and I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I finally saw her for what she was: selfish, manipulative, and unfaithful. Anger because she'd betrayed me on every level. I hadn't slept much, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going down without a fight. I was going to protect what was mine, and I was going to make sure she paid for her lies. I decided I'd cut her off completely. No more excuses, no more pretending everything was okay. I was going to confront her with everything I had, and then I'd decide whether to try to fix this or walk away for good. I'd been humiliated, betrayed, and used. She'd promised me retirement, promised me she loved me, but all she cared about was her own greed and her affair. I felt a deep sense of betrayal, but also a strange clarity. I knew what I had to do. "Do you want me to keep going?" The following days felt like walking through a fog. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her lies, the way she looked at Mark with those sneaky little smiles. I kept replaying everything I'd uncovered: her secret account, the texts, the money she'd siphoned off. It was like some twisted game she'd been playing behind my back. and now I was left holding the pieces of a shattered life. Deciding to act, I contacted a divorce lawyer. I wanted to make sure I had everything in order: property, savings, debts, everything I'd worked for. But I also knew I had to get ahead of her plans to claim everything in court. She'd been talking about divorce for months, trying to set herself up for a big payout. She promised Mark she'd leave me with nothing, and I was convinced she was planning to do just that. I had to stop her. I started gathering more evidence: screenshots of her texts with Mark, bank statements showing the transfers, even some of her emails where she'd hinted at leaving me with nothing. I wanted to be prepared for whatever she threw at me. I also made copies of everything, just in case she tried to destroy or hide the evidence. I knew that if I was going to fight for what's mine, I had to be thorough. Meanwhile, was acting even more bitchy and entitled. She'd throw tantrums when I brought up the divorce, calling me paranoid or accusing me of trying to control her. She'd say I was overreacting, that she loved me, that I was just jealous of her success. But I saw through her bullshit now. She was a master manipulator, and I wasn't going to let her gaslight me anymore. Every time she tried to turn the tables, I just looked her in the eye and said, "You're not fooling anyone anymore." One evening, I decided I'd confront her directly. I told her I knew everything: the affair, the money, the lies, and that I wasn't going to let her walk away with a dime. I told her I'd be filing for divorce and fighting for custody of any assets, and if necessary, for full control of the house. I wanted her to know that I was serious. Her face twisted into that familiar sneer, and she started to spin her usual lies, saying I was crazy, that I was just jealous, that she loved me and only me. But I cut her off, telling her that I'd already spoken to a lawyer and that I was prepared to fight. That night, she stormed out of the house, screaming about how I was ruining everything, how she'd make sure I got nothing. Her words echoed in my mind as I sat alone, feeling a strange mixture of anger, sadness, and relief. I realized I'd been living in a fantasy, believing she was the woman I married, when in reality she'd been planning her escape all along. I'd been blind, trusting, and naive, and now I was paying the price. But I also understood one thing: I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I'd fight for what's mine, and I'd expose her for the liar she truly was. I knew she wanted to claim everything in court: our house, our savings, even my retirement fund. She'd already promised Mark she'd leave me with nothing, and I was sure she'd try to pull the same stunt in the divorce. She was calculating, cold, and utterly selfish. She promised me a future, but her actions showed she only cared about herself and her greed. I decided to hire a forensic accountant to dig into her finances more thoroughly. If she was siphoning off money into that secret account, I wanted to find out exactly how much, where it was, and how to prove it. I also planned to get an order to freeze her assets, just in case she tried to hide or move money before the divorce proceedings. I'd already started talking to friends and family to get moral support. I knew I couldn't do this alone. Every day, I felt the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. It was a crushing burden, knowing the woman I loved had been secretly plotting her escape for months. But part of me also felt a strange sense of clarity. I was done being the naive, trusting fool. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine. I was going to make sure she paid for her lies and her greed. And I was going to rebuild my life, stronger, wiser, and more cautious than ever before. Do you want me to keep going? The days that followed were a whirlwind. I had the lawyer, the forensic accountant, and a plan. I knew would try to spin this to her advantage. She always did. She was good at twisting words, at playing the victim, at convincing everyone she was the wronged wife. But I wasn't about to let her manipulate her way out of this one. I had evidence, and I was ready to fight dirty if I had to. First, I filed for divorce. Not just any divorce, but one that included a request for a full financial disclosure. I wanted the court to see every penny she'd hidden, every lie she'd told. I also made sure to include a request for spousal support and a division of assets. I knew she'd try to claim everything, but I was determined to get my fair share, and to stop her from siphoning off any more money. Meanwhile, was losing her temper. She started throwing tantrums, slamming doors, and calling me names. She called me paranoid, insecure, and even accused me of cheating myself, just to turn the tables. She was desperate and I could see her losing control. Her bitchy side came out full force, snarling and yelling about how I was ruining her life, how she'd make sure I got nothing. That's when I realized she was already planning her big move, trying to intimidate me into backing down. But I wasn't backing down. I had too much on her now. One afternoon, I caught her trying to access her hidden account from her phone. She was frantically trying to transfer more money, I assume, or hide some proof. I confronted her right then and there. She froze, her face turning pale for a second before she started lying again. She said she was just checking her emails, that I was paranoid. I told her I had the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, everything, and that she wasn't going to get away with this. I demanded she stop immediately or I'd take legal action. That night, I sat her down and laid everything out calmly but firmly. I told her I knew about her affair, her secret account, her plans to leave me with nothing. I told her I was going to fight for my rights, for the house, for the savings, for the retirement. She looked at me with that bitchy sneer, trying to act innocent, but I wasn't buying it. I told her that I'd be going after her for fraud if I had to, because siphoning off money and cheating are serious crimes, and I was ready to expose her. The next day, I sent her a formal letter warning her about the legal consequences of hiding assets or transferring money. I also told her I'd be requesting a court order to freeze any suspicious accounts. I could see her panic rising. Her usual bitchy demeanor was starting to crack. She yelled at me, called me paranoid and controlling, but I just sat there, calm and collected. I knew I had the upper hand now. She'd already lost her grip and I was only getting started. I also started talking to her boss, Mark. I wanted to know what kind of pressure she'd been under, what promises she'd made to him, and whether he knew about her plans. What I found out was even more infuriating. Mark was just as manipulative as she was. He promised her a better life, a new future, and she'd bought into it. She convinced herself she was entitled to everything I had, our house, our savings, my retirement, because she was the wife, and she'd been promised a big payout when she retired. I couldn't believe her audacity. She promised Mark she'd leave me with nothing, and she'd even told him she'd take me to court and claim everything. That's why I was so determined to get ahead of her. I knew she'd try to claim the house, the money, everything, and I was going down without a fight. I'd hire the best lawyers, I'd dig up every shred of evidence, and I'd make sure the court saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative cheat. Throughout this process, I felt a strange combination of anger and sadness. Anger at her for betraying me, for lying and stealing. Sadness because I still loved her, or at least I thought I did, and it hurt to see how far she'd fallen. But mostly, I felt determined. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I was going to make her regret ever crossing me. She promised Mark she'd leave me with nothing, but I was going to turn that promise against her. I knew the legal battle wouldn't be easy. She'd try every trick in the book, denial, accusations, emotional blackmail, but I was prepared. I'd fight for my rights, for my dignity, and for the little bit of hope I had left of rebuilding my life after this nightmare. I just kept telling myself, I'm not the fool anymore. I see her now for what she is, a selfish, manipulative liar, and I'd make sure she paid the price. Would you like me to continue? The court date was set and I felt like I was walking into a battlefield, was doing everything she could to manipulate the situation, crying, pleading, trying to paint herself as the victim. She even hired her own lawyer, a slick, aggressive guy who specialized in divorce cases. She was trying to spin her lies, claiming I was paranoid, that I'd been controlling and abusive. But I had the evidence and I was ready to present it. I knew I had to stay calm, keep my composure, and let the facts speak for themselves. On the day of the hearing, I arrived early, clutching the folder with all the proof, bank statements, texts, the investigator's report, everything. Came in looking bitchy and defiant, throwing glances my way like she was already planning her next move. Mark wasn't there physically, but I knew he was watching, probably nervously hoping she'd win in court so he could get his piece of the pie too. The judge asked for the case, and I started laying out everything I'd uncovered. I explained how I'd secretly opened that account, siphoned off over $300, $0, and was planning to claim everything in the divorce, Our house, our savings, my retirement, leaving me with nothing. I presented the evidence, pointed out the transfers, the texts, the emails. I could see her lawyer trying to object, but the judge wasn't convinced. The judge asked her directly if she had any explanation for the missing money, and with that bitchy smirk, just shrugged and said she was entitled to her share, that I was paranoid and controlling. That's when I saw her start to crack. Her face flushed, and her usual sneer faltered for a second. I knew she wasn't used to losing control like this. I kept going, explaining how her affair with Mark was ongoing, how she'd been planning her escape for months, and how she'd lied to everyone, including her own family, about her happy marriage. I told the court about her promises to Mark, her plans to leave me with nothing, and her attempts to hide assets. I could see the judge taking notes, nodding slightly. Finally, the judge asked her directly if she had any assets or accounts she hadn't disclosed, hesitated, then tried to deny it. But I had already submitted everything, and her lawyer looked flustered. The judge ordered a forensic audit of her finances, froze her accounts, and issued a temporary restraining order preventing her from transferring any more money. The court also scheduled a follow-up hearing to settle the property division and finalize the divorce. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt exhausted but victorious. I'd managed to get a significant victory, at least for now. Looked furious, her bitchy mask slipping for a moment, revealing her desperation. I knew this wasn't over yet, but I'd made sure she'd be held accountable for her lies and theft. I also knew I'd have to keep fighting, because she'd tried to manipulate her way out of this, especially in the next phases of the divorce. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, reflecting on everything. It was a hard, bitter pill to swallow, trust broken, vows shattered, a life I thought I knew turned upside down. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. I'd finally seen her for who she really was, and I'd taken the steps to protect myself. I realized I'd been a fool for so long, believing her lies, trusting her blindly. Now I was finally awake. I knew the road ahead would be tough. She'd probably keep fighting, trying to claim more, trying to make me look like the villain. But I had the evidence, I had the law on my side, and I had decided I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I'd rebuild from this, no matter how painful it was. Because at the end of the day, I learned that some people are just too selfish, too manipulative to be trusted. And the only way to survive them is to fight back with everything you've got. Would you like me to continue with the final part? In the months that followed, I threw myself into the legal process, making sure every detail was scrutinized. Attempts to manipulate, threaten, or plead her way out of the situation only confirmed what I already knew. She was a master at lying and twisting the truth. But I had the evidence, and I had the law on my side. The forensic audit revealed just how much she'd stolen and hidden, and the court made it clear that she wouldn't get away with her schemes. The final divorce decree came through, and I got what was fair. My house, a good settlement and protection from her. Future claims. She was furious, screaming in court about how unfair it all was, but the judge was unmoved. I saw her bitchy, entitled attitude crumble as she realized her plans had failed. She accused me of being controlling and paranoid, trying to make herself the victim once again, but it was all noise. The truth was out, and she was held accountable. Looking back, I can honestly say that the pain of betrayal doesn't just fade overnight. It's a wound that leaves scars. But I learned a lot from this nightmare. I learned to trust my instincts, to be more cautious about who I let into my life, and to never assume someone is what they seem. This betrayal was a brutal lesson, but it also made me stronger. I learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you. You can't just sit back and hope everything works out. Sometimes you have to take control and do what's necessary to protect yourself. I also realized that revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about reclaiming your life and dignity. I didn't want her to walk away with my money or my peace of mind. I wanted her to understand that her lies and manipulations had consequences and that she couldn't just get away with it. The feeling of finally standing up to her, of fighting back, was both cathartic and empowering. Now I'm rebuilding. I've moved into a new place, started fresh, and I'm slowly putting the pieces of my life back together. I've cut ties with her completely. No contact, no drama. I've learned the importance of honesty, loyalty, and being cautious about who I trust. Most of all, I've learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect what's yours. Because if you don't, someone else will take it all. Your money, your happiness, your peace. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your gut. Don't be afraid to fight for what's right. And never let anyone steal your life without a fight. The pain of betrayal is real, but so is the strength you find when you stand up for yourself. Because at the end of the day, the only person responsible for your happiness is you. And no one, no matter how bitchy or manipulative, can take that away unless you let them. I hope my story helps someone else see the signs early or gives them the courage to stand up and fight. Because, believe me, it's worth it.